When the great black thinker Du Bois reviewed Claude McKay's novel Home to Harlem in 1928, he said, "It nauseates me, and after reading the dirtier parts of its filth, I feel distinctly like taking a bath." Du Bois was not being a prude. He believed McKay was celebrating drunkenness, fighting, and wild sex, exactly the kind of stereotypes that white people expected from black writers. Du Bois feared McKay was selling out to white audiences hungry for exotic primitive thrills. For nearly 100 years, this argument has stuck to home to Harlem. Is it a harmful book full of stereotypes, or is it a radical revolutionary text? In recent decades, many scholars have tried to rescue McKay. Marxists call the book a working class anti capitalist novel. Queer theorists see it as a celebration of male friendship and alternative communities. Some even call it a queer black Marxist manifesto. To understand McKay, we need to understand vitalism. In the early 1900s, some philosophers like Henry Bergson and Nietzsche argued that living things have a special vital force that cannot be reduced to mere chemistry or machines. Life is a continuous flow, a constant becoming. You cannot measure it like a clock. White modernist writers like Gertrude Stein and T.S. Eliot borrowed these ideas, but scholars have largely ignored how black writers of the Harlem Renaissance used them. This is a mistake. McKay read Nietzsche and other philosophers as a young man in Jamaica. He deliberately brought these ideas into the streets of Harlem. In Home to Harlem, this vitalist impulse becomes a way to resist white supremacy. McKay's characters are not just primitive bodies, they occupy a middle zone between raw animal instinct and dead civilized boredom. Consider the novel's hero Jake Brown. Jake is not raw animal enough to be undiscriminating, nor civilized enough to be cynical, McKay writes. He is neither a beast nor a bored, over civilized white man. He has his own peculiar rhythm. This in between space becomes a site of freedom. Jake's body follows its own internal energy, not the demands of a factory clock or white society. If Jake represents the body's natural wisdom, his best friend Ray represents the mind's struggle. Ray is a Haitian exile, bookish, brooding, and overthinking. Critics often treat them as opposites, the joyful worker versus the tortured intellectual. But they are actually two sides of the same coin. McKay writes that life burned in Ray perhaps more intensely than in Jake. Ray felt more and his range was wider. But Ray's problem is that he drinks in more life than he can use. He feels everything, but he cannot turn feeling into action. He is like a tree with roots in the soil and sap flowing, but he cannot move like an animal. Through Ray, McKay attacks the idea of Western civilization. When a friend argues that black people should adopt refined middle class manners, Ray explodes. Civilization is rotten. He argues that refinement dries out human vitality. It leaves you hollow inside, false and dry. For an oppressed people to beg for entry into this rotten system is to invite spiritual death. Ray's tragedy is that he has been trained in Western philosophy, but he knows that this philosophy is a machine for killing black life force. Western imperialism justifies itself through a linear timeline. The story goes primitive, barbarian, modern, and civilized. Colonized people are told they are behind and must catch up. To be free, they must learn to march to the white man's clock. McKay rejects this completely. Instead, he celebrates unhistorical time, moments that exist outside industrial progress, the cabarets, jazz dens, and buffet flats of Harlem run on a different rhythm. When Jake enters a cabaret, he steps out of the labor clock. The music and dancing do not point toward a future goal, they exist in a pure, ongoing present. This is exactly what Bergson called durée, real lived time, not time chopped into seconds by a factory clock. Jake's refusal to settle into a permanent job, get married, or buy a house is a political choice. His vagabond lifestyle keeps him from being drained by a system that turns black bodies into white capital. Being behind the times is actually a survival strategy. Home to Harlem is famous as a Harlem novel, but its heart is in the Caribbean, specifically Haiti. To understand why, we need to look at world politics in 1928. In 1915, the United States Marines invaded and occupied Haiti. They stayed until 1934. They claimed it was a civilizing mission to bring order to a backward island. In reality, they brought forced labor, stole land, and crushed Haitian resistance. For black intellectuals in Harlem, the occupation of Haiti was a wake-up call. It proved that United States was no beacon of democracy. The racial violence of Jim Crow South and the imperial violence in Haiti were the same system. McKay uses Ray's character to bring this reality into Harlem. Ray is not just an immigrant, he is a political exile whose family was destroyed by the American invasion. Through Ray's memories, McKay shows that American uplift is actually white supremacy. The black waiter in Harlem, the black soldier in France, and the black peasant in Haiti all face the same imperial mission. By including Haiti, McKay builds an alternative history. Official Western history taught that the Haitian Revolution of 1791, where enslaved people defeated Napoleon's army, was a savage accident. 20th century Haiti's problems, so the story went, proved black people could not govern themselves. McKay uses Ray to pass down a different memory. Ray carries the stories of Toussaint L'Ouverture and other Haitian revolutionaries into the kitchens of American railroad cars. When Ray tells Jake about the revolution, Jake does not respond with facts and dates, he responds with physical desire. Boy, I would like to find a place like that, a town where a black man can feel like a real king. The story hits Jake as emotional, bodily truth. It awakens his hunger for self rule. McKay stages the scene in the kitchen of a moving train. The ultimate machine of capitalist speed and schedules. But inside that kitchen, two black men use the movement to swap stories of anti-colonial revolt. They turn a tool of modern industry into a vehicle for black internationalist consciousness. Finally, we must look at the figure of the wanderer. Jake deserts the US Army, flees to London, lands in Harlem, and ends the novel packing for Chicago. Leaves Haiti, works in New York, and boards a freighter for Europe. Neither man stays put. In traditional literature, the wanderer is a tragic figure, homeless, lost, cut off from roots. But in McKay's world, vagabondage is strength. The wanderer escapes the traps of the nation state, borders, citizenship, property, the permanent job. By moving constantly, he builds an alternative geography based on temporary connections, shared labor, and moments of pleasure. This vagabond style is also how McKay solves the problem of writing a black modernist novel. He does not force black life into the traditional European novel, which depends on stable homes, family drama, and straight line plots. He writes an episodic loose narrative that jumps from bar to bar, job to job, and city to city. The novel's shape matches the syncopated rhythms of jazz and the rolling motion of a ship at sea. Home to Harlem is far more than a jazzy period piece or a simple celebration of primitive life. It is a sophisticated philosophical work that attacks the very foundations of Western progress. By blending European vitalism with a global black perspective, McKay insists that black survival requires its own relationship to time, history, and the body. He proves that black life force cannot be contained by the sterile categories of white humanism, nor can it be regulated by the factory clock. Writing from the heart of the urban north, McKay built a transnational map and an alternative timeline. He created an enduring space for a free, self directed black form of life, one that still speaks to us today.